Our cities have grown faster in the last 50 years than the last 10,000. 54% of all humans now live in urban areas. By mid-century, that's going to be close to 70. You look at cities like Shanghai or New York City, and they've turned into concrete jungles in a race to keep up with the infrastructure to support their current populations. But when people need a space of refuge, where do they go? They leave the city. They move to the suburbs. I live in San Francisco, and this is where I go. Golden Gate Park is the largest urban park in the US. This is a tea garden that's one of hundreds of installations in the park, including an art museum, a science museum, and myriads of other types of spaces that provide refuge to the city, to the citizens of San Francisco and beyond. Because there's a huge problem in cities today. There's a lot of gray space. Start looking for it. It's the chain link fences, gray walls, sidewalks, streets, parking lots, all spaces that were built very quickly, but not thoughtfully or creatively. At the same time, 1 in 10 stores is sitting vacant across the US. It's been true for the last 2 years. And those spaces are street-level spaces where we're walking by every day and we see something pretty uninspiring like the photo you see behind me. This is a city in China called Dayuan. The infrastructure's there, looks pretty, could house almost 1 million people. Almost nobody lives there. It's a ghost city. So I wonder, what if we reinvented our forgotten spaces? What would that look like? Urban prototyping in San Francisco is reinventing the sidewalk, in a space that we can now use to interact with each other. There's an urban prototyping festival where hundreds of artists put installations on sidewalks across the city. This is a more permanent installation that you see here, where this gentleman is able to communicate almost directly, one-to-one, with someone in a similar installation across the sidewalk. I've been walking by here and I've seen strangers interacting. I've seen people talk to homeless people. Interactions that would have not normally happened, and most likely people would have had their headphones on and their eyes set to the ground. Another forgotten space, alleys. Here in Fargo, we have Alley Fair. Alleys are no longer for just garbage trucks and muggers. They're actually a space for creativity and murals and people to interact. Another forgotten space that we can think more creatively about. I wonder if we created our cities and made them a platform for collision. In Medellin, Colombia, it used to be the bloodiest city on earth. Pablo Escobar, Colombian cartels, and in the last 10 years, they've started to rethink how they could create public space in a way that has significantly reduced the murder per capita rate. 20 years ago, Medellin was double the next city on that list with murders per capita. With public spaces like the one you see behind me, as well as increased public transportation to get into city centers, they've reduced murder rates in the worst areas by 80%. And I wonder if we created more moments of action in our cities. The selfie wall. This is in Venice, in LA. And little moments like these, this could have been a construction wall that was plain plywood or graffitied and tagged up in a very ugly manner. This artist decided to take it upon himself and put the word selfie stenciled backwards so it would obviously show up correctly in photos. And now this wall has found its own fame. And people are sharing this online, and it cements itself in history a little bit more, as well as giving moments of joy to people that are walking by. I know someone who had fun in there. And just south of here in the Twin Cities, we have Northern Spark, an amazing festival that goes from dusk to dawn. So not just rethinking space, but rethinking time. When are people active in our cities? When can we be active? When can we be out and comfortable at any time of the day or night? This art installation was put on by Jim Campbell, a New York artist, that recorded the silhouettes of people walking through the subway. So if you stood back, you could see the images of people moving back and forth. But then you could also walk into it and experience it. So what if we thought really, really big about what our cities could do? Every time I'm walking through the city at night in San Francisco, I am very fortunate over the past year to be able to see the Bay Lights. This is almost 25,000 LEDs over nearly 2 miles of the Bay Bridge that goes from San Francisco to Oakland. It's probably the largest art installation I've ever seen. And just like Jim Campbell's piece in the Twin Cities, you see constant motion with the lights in hundreds of different patterns. Truly a moment of wonder for the tourists and the citizens of the city, where normally it could just be a dark, gray bridge. I think I like it a little bit more than the Golden Gate Bridge. And Castle Hill Graffiti Park in Austin, another place I've experienced recently, where it has a perfect view of the skyline of Austin. Definitely a multi-million-dollar project waiting to happen. They could build condos, no problem. But the owners of this space decided to leave it open. There's multiple tiers of walls where graffiti artists, new artists, young and old, I've seen a father teaching a daughter, and I've seen huge scale murals take place here. It's something that we're now giving the right to our artists to actually have a voice in the urban dialogue. Actually practice and get better at what you're doing. And then appreciate it. It becomes a gathering place for creative minds to come together. And then the biggest think big idea of them all, Burning Man, Black Rock City, Nevada. 70,000 people last year lived in this city for a week. It was a city that you could create anything. I've seen some of the most enormous interactive art pieces ever. I've seen people come together and just remove judgment and norms and not just think outside the box, but completely recreate what our society could be. We're not held to the streets and the walls and the regulations that we see today. We created those. And we should continue to create what we actually want to see, where we'll be happier. So I want to encourage everyone here to be bold. These cities are ours. And we should have our voice in them. So next time you see a vacant space like this, throw a seed bomb in it. Plant some wildflowers. Or behind the Fargo Theater, if you see a wall like this, make a mural. In 24 hours, myself and Joe Burgum found a place that we could paint a mural, got the okay by the space owner, and did it. It's not hard to do. And now it's something much more interesting to look at than just a plain white door. Hot Tea is a Minneapolis-based artist who now does non-destructive street art and yarn across the world. He didn't start out like this. He started just by putting his name in very block text on wooden foam poles in Minneapolis. But he took that to a next level, and then a next level after that, where he was covering forgotten tennis courts and skyways across the highway. It just shows that even with the littlest things and the most simple mediums, we can do things creative and make our cities a little bit more interesting to look at. And that vacant space that we saw earlier, what if that was a pop-up shop or a pop-up gallery? We got our artist friends together and took it over. We opened up a lounge that people could hang out in. Something than just papered up walls and a sign that said for rent. Even the small things matter. This gnome is no bigger than my hand. It's one of the first pieces of art I saw in San Francisco when I visited there years ago. But someone left it there to be discovered. They wanted me to come upon it. They wanted me to be inspired and to continue to look in the cracks and crevices in cities where normally they're forgotten. So how do you do this? 3 things. Pay attention. It's very easy to just commute. But if you open your eyes and you look in places that other people aren't looking, you'll start to see these things. They're all around Fargo. They're all around every city in the world. Start small. Like the gnome, it's very easy to do something and do your part. Find what you're passionate about. What do you care? What do you want to see in your city? Help make that happen. And don't stop. Like I said, cities are growing faster than they ever have before. So more than ever, the community members of those cities need to have a voice. So after you leave today, keep this in mind. Create the spaces that matter. Space could be your office, it could be your city, it could be the street that you walk to work on. But it's our time to retake them and create moments of wonder. Thank you.